Hello! Skirk's drip marketing has just dropped, and we can see that she is Cryo. It is very disappointing, but at least it's a great opportunity to talk how Genshin could go beyond elements. I'll also present my own ideas for this. Firstly, let's consider the context. This game might seem to be all about elements, but is Teyvat, lore-wise, really that much dominated by elements? Teapot. All this spatial magic that we see in this and other cases. Is it associated with any element? Which one? Adepti, their cultivation and special abilities and powers, including shapeshifting. What does it have to do with elements? Same question for other paths of ascension, evolution, like those abyssal beings. Alchemy, creating artificial life, and so on. Maybe elements are involved here. Still, it seems more than that. Negative vibes emanating from remnants of slain gods. Those dark and light powers from the chasm. Neuma and Uzia in Fontaine. Celestia and Abyss. And so on. Feel free to add more. No, world of Genshin isn't all about elements. Of course it's not. It's a world filled to the brim with various types of magic and fantasy powers. It is essential it makes Teyvat what it is. Elements can explain only a fraction of this fantasy world. Even before the game's release, Dane Sleepy was presented as an upcoming playable character who apparently uses powers different than elements. One of the very first bosses is Tartaglia, who canonically uses abyssal powers. But we only got a Hydro character, yeah. Now Skirk is coming, who also should be using some otherworldly powers, and what? She's just Cryo? Seriously? Just look at her. At this cosmic design, remember how we met her, like she's from another world. How does it fit her that she's just Cryo? It doesn't. Why don't we see other powers being added to the gameplay? Well, maybe they are just not needed for the gameplay. Maybe it's good to stay with only elements and there is nothing to complain, no issue. Let's take a look then. We've already mentioned Numa and Uzia in Fontaine. What was kinda weird, kinda pointless addition to the game. And then Natlan, all this Phlogiston and Night Souls bullshit. To this, enemies requiring new powers. It's not coming out of nowhere. It shows that also for gameplay there was a need to add something more. We can see it also in how Genshin stagnated. Just take a look at how many Pyro on-field DPSs we got. Or how Hoyo increasingly went for gimmicks and weird combat designs. I don't even mean that it's all bad, only that it shows the need for something more. That also includes random and boring new synergies, like suddenly turning burning into new spread, cause sure, whatever. Finally, maybe it's not that apparent for some players, but in general Genshin characters bring quite limited value. In some cases it's more evident, like starting from Albedo being a joke, Sigewin being a disappointment, and so on. Sure, they always have something, so they can be defended. In case of 4 stars it's especially if you get C6, but yeah. That's also a big part how Genshin avoided power creep for so long, exactly by limiting value of characters. But that's a separated story. Main point here is how limiting value of characters slowed down the development of the game and how we could see the need for something new, for something more, much quicker, if simply releasing better characters. Certainly, Hoyo could focus on fixing and developing elements and reactions. Potentially, it could be enough for the gameplay. I absolutely think that it's more important than adding different powers. In the first place, they should take care about elements. This is a good topic for a separated discussion, how elements could be improved. Nevertheless, here I would want to jump over that and talk about other powers, cause again, considering whole world building, lore, story, it just doesn't make sense. We are not getting anything more than elements. It's more evident now, when we are closer to the end, when more is revealed about the Abyss, when Skirk is becoming playable, But in fact, it would be much better to get something more from the start, as we've mentioned about child. It's also worth considering how for gameplay it is better to have more than one system. If you have a few of them, then their interaction and mixes can create magic. It's better to have a few systems working like that instead of just one, expanded so much to fulfill all needs on its own. Problem here is that Hoyo fans are so used to slop, so well trained to accept bare bones and to being mistreated, and they developed selective attention to not see what nonsense Hoyo is creating, that it might be hard to realize how disappointing this is. So, yes, I would say that Genshin should have more powers in gameplay. I wouldn't see them as alternative or separated elements. No, they wouldn't work as elements, not based on application or reactions. I would see them as different and separated powers. Besides being another types of damage, I imagine they could influence elements and reactions, change how they work. Imagine that abyssal powers reverse some normal rules, as its power of corruption. There could be also powers that would clear elemental application, or prevent it, or the opposite, boost elemental application. This way, they could bring something new to standard reaction gameplay. I would also not exclude some status effects being added onto enemies, but not as full-fledged application like with elements. Those are just some ideas that I think are worth considering. Of course, it would also mean different types of enemies and additional mechanics, as first and foremost, they are needed to make additional tools useful. I would call those powers attributes, and I would propose adding them from the start, in similar fashion as Uzia and Numa. This way characters would have specific element as well as attribute, opening new dimension for more interesting mixes. Maybe not every character would have an attribute, but they would have stronger elemental powers instead. Later in the game, some specific characters could be purely about attributes and bring their full glory. I propose 4 attributes. First pair, not surprisingly, would be Celestial and Abyssal powers. To this, I would add Draconic attribute and Alchemical attribute. First two are familiar, Celestial as tied to Divine and Ideal, and Abyssal as the opposite. However, I would put more emphasis on ambiguous nature of the Abyss. Like, inevitably it brings something evil, something problematic, but it's also necessary for the world. It might be yin-yang style or something. Draconic attribute could be said as being tied to nature, but with special meaning, as dragons ruled a different world, more like primordial or whatever. Alchemical attribute would be tied to the power of transformation, also related to culture and technology. There, I think that could bring some structure to this messy world of all kinds of magic that are often coming out of the blue. I'll add that in my opinion, Genshin should have 8 elements, not 7. To balance and harmonize everything, 8 would be much better number, and I'm firm in my stance. So that would be 8 elements and 4 attributes, 12 powers. That's how I would imagine Genshin in general picture. So that's an overview and some of my ideas. I was thinking so much about this topic, designing whole game system, either for reimagining Genshin or for other similar game. Other time I might tell more if you are interested. And Skirk, this isn't really the topic of this video, but what the heck is this? So those are just fancy and torn stockings? Seriously, if they wanted to make her a cosmic fairy or something like that, they could make it better. This detail here ruins her design in my opinion. They could take inspiration even from Shorekeeper. It's not bad, concept is interesting, but just could be better in my opinion. Okay, whatever. Share what do you think? Would you want to see in Genshin more fantasy powers than elements? Or maybe just more elements? Tell whatever you think. Thank you very much.